Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into Islam's most sacred site, the Kaaba. You've probably seen the viral myths, the crazy theories online. Well, we're going to cut through all that and get to the documented facts to show you what it truly represents.
All right, let's jump right into the deep end with the biggest question making the rounds online. Is the black stone of the Kaaba really a Shiva lingam? I mean, this theory is everywhere on social media, so let's get straight to what the sources actually say.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll look at the internet rumors versus the facts, what Islamic sources say the stone actually is, the huge difference between worship and just showing respect, and yeah, we're even going to talk about what's really inside the Kaaba. Let's do this. Okay, so our goal here is pretty simple. We just want to cut through all the noise. We're going straight to the historical and religious sources to try and bring some actual clarity to the whole conversation about what's going on in Mecca. Right. So before we can even start debunking any myths, we have to understand what the black stone, or the Hajar al-Aswad, actually is according to Islamic tradition. And trust me, its origin story is totally key to understanding everything else. So first things first, let's talk about the name. It's not some big mystical secret, it's actually super straightforward. In Arabic, Hajar means stone and Aswad means black. So put them together and you get the black stone. Simple as that. Okay, but here's where the story gets really fascinating. According to a saying from the Prophet Muhammad, this stone isn't even from Earth. The tradition holds that it was literally sent down from paradise. It's seen as a celestial relic.
And that brings us to its whole purpose. So why is it even there? Well, Islamic tradition says it was placed in the corner of the Kaaba by Abraham and his son Ishmael for one very specific reason: to mark the starting point for the tawaf, which is the ritual of circling the building. So think of it like a navigational marker, not something to be worshipped.
Okay, so this brings us to probably the biggest misunderstanding of all, the idea that Muslims are worshiping a stone. And to really get why this is such a fundamental misunderstanding, we have to look at the absolute core, #1 principle of Islam. And that core principle is called Tawhid. I mean, everything in Islam is built on this one idea, the absolute, unwavering belief in the oneness of God. It's the foundation. It says there is only one God and only God can be worshipped. It's not just some minor rule. It defines the entire faith. Worshipping an object or a person? It's just not possible within that worldview. And the polar opposite of Tawhid is something called shirk. That's the act of worshipping anything other than the one God, whether it's a person, an object, or even an idea. And listen, this isn't seen as a small mistake. It is considered the most serious, the most unforgivable sin in all of Islam. Period.
You know, there's this really famous statement from Caliph Umar, who was one of the Prophet's closest companions, and it just perfectly captures this whole perspective. He's touching the stone, and he says out loud, "I know you're just a stone. You can't help me or hurt me." He makes it crystal clear that the only reason he's even kissing it is because he saw the Prophet do it.
And that right there is the key distinction. Kissing or touching the stone isn't an act of worship. It's an act of emulation, of love for the Prophet Muhammad. It's about following his personal example, which is called his sunnah. So it's all about reverence for the Prophet's actions, not devotion to the stone itself. Okay, so now that we have all that context, let's get back to that physical comparison. Does the claim that the black stone is a Shiva lingam actually hold up when you look at the evidence? Let's see.
Well, when you put them side by side, the physical differences are pretty striking. The black stone isn't one solid piece. It's actually a bunch of fragments held together in a silver frame. A Shiva lingam, on the other hand, has a very specific, solid, cylindrical shape. And as we've already talked about, their histories and what they're for are just completely different.
And then there's this massive historical point. When the Prophet Muhammad took control of Mecca, he went into the Kaaba and famously destroyed 360 idols that were in there. So you have to ask the logical question. If the black stone was just another idol, why on earth would it be the only one he didn't destroy?
You know, all this talk about idols leads us to the next big mystery that you see all over the internet. People see this big, closed door draped in that black cloth, and, well, their imaginations just run wild. So the big question is, what is actually inside the Kaaba?
I mean, the theories are out there, right? Some say there's a hidden statue, others think it's some kind of powerful secret object. But here's the thing, we don't actually need to speculate. People have been going inside and documenting the interior for centuries.
And the reality, well, it's actually profound because of how simple it is.
It's an empty room. That's it. There are 3 wooden pillars holding up the roof, a few old lamps hanging down, marble floors and walls with some Quranic verses written on them. But what's not in there? No statues, no idols, no images, nothing.
And maybe this is the ultimate proof right here. After he cleared all those idols out of the Kaaba, the Prophet Muhammad himself went inside to pray. I mean, think about it. His entire life's mission was to end idol worship. The idea that he would then turn around and pray in a room that still had an idol in it, it's just a complete contradiction. It makes no sense.
So, okay, if the black stone isn't an idol and the inside of the Kaaba is totally empty, then what's its real purpose? And why is it called the house of God?
Well, the Quran actually defines its role pretty clearly. It says it was the very first house built for mankind for one specific purpose, to worship the one God. It's meant to be a central point, a focal point for that worship.
And this is really the key distinction to understand. It's called the house of God, not because God physically lives there, but in the same way you'd call a courthouse a house of justice. It's a house dedicated to the worship of God. Its main job today is to be the Qibla, that one single direction that all Muslims around the world face when they pray. It creates this incredible sense of unity.
All right, so let's just quickly recap what we've learned from the sources. The black stone, it's seen as a relic from paradise, basically a starting marker for a ritual. Touching it is about following the Prophet's example. It's not worship. And the Kaaba itself? It's an empty building, which is a really powerful symbol for the worship of one single, unseen God.
So, we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. In a world that's so full of images and icons and things to look at, what does it mean that one of the most sacred places on earth gets its power from being empty? It really challenges our whole idea of what makes a place sacred, doesn't it? We hope this has cleared a few things up. Thanks for joining us.